Okay. So good morning, ma'am. Good morning, everyone. I'm Tricia Gaurano, and I'm going to present the grit theory spearheaded by Angela Duckworth. So let's begin. So before we get into grit, let us first get to know who Angela Duckworth is. So she is the world's leading expert on grit, which is the much hyped ingredient in personal success. And she also wrote the book Grit, the Power of Passion and Perseverance, which is about the short and long-term effect of grit in schools, at work, and in personal relationships. So in this photo here, she is actually best known also for her TED Talk speech with regards to grit. So she's also the founder and the CEO of Character Lab, which is a nonprofit whose mission is to advance the science and the practice of character development. It's not only limited to grit, but also encompassing the other characters. So in her researches and in her surveys that she conducted worldwide, she always asks this main question: who is successful here and why? So they thought of a lot of factors here and there, and they asked themselves, is it talent? Is it the people who learn faster, like IQ? Is it people who look better or have good looks? Is it the stronger people with better health or physical health? Is it the people who relate better to others or having social intelligence? Or is it the people who are richer, higher in terms of socioeconomic status? Or is it people like Einstein who say that who are full of curiosity, to sustain their achievements and endeavors in life? But what they found out is that the common denominator that these people who achieved and succeeded in a lot of different areas is one thing, and that is grit. Okay, that is the common denominator that they have. So grit is defined as the passion and perseverance for very long-term goals. So you can call it like stamina in living life like a marathon, not a sprint. So these people are here for the long run. They put in the effort day in and day out. So there's a misconception here that the reason why most people are successful is that society overvalues talent. And based on Ms. Duckworth's research is that talent and grit are sometimes inversely or negatively related to each other. So just because you're smarter or more talented doesn't automatically make you grittier. And just because you're grittier doesn't automatically make you smarter or more talented. So based on their findings, there were a lot of talented individuals who do not follow through their commitment. So some are going to be interested in this thing for a while, and then they drop it later on. So which brings us to the question, how do we build grit? So here, we have 3 points here that we are going to discuss in our next slides. And first is to have a growth mindset, not a fixed mindset. Next is to do deliberate practice. And next is to practice self-control. And here we have a little table which shows the recipe for achievement. So it shows here that talent multiplied by effort, you get skill. And with that skill, if you put in a lot more effort, that's when you'll get an achievement. So what do these mean? So later on we'll get to know more. But first, let's go on to our first point, which is to have a growth mindset. So this terminology is actually coined by Dr. Carol Dweck, and it is defined as the belief that the ability to learn is not fixed, that it can change with your effort. And it is also that failure is not a permanent condition. So they tried teaching these to schools, and they show videos of the brain making new connections with the neurons, making new synapses every time they learn something new. So it shows here that the brain changes and grows in response to challenge, much like a muscle. So in a muscle, whenever you try to use it, you exercise it, and then it becomes stronger. But the process is not so cool, right? It hurts our body, and then we'll need to rest. And then when the muscle repairs itself, it becomes sturdier, it becomes more reliable, it becomes more stronger. So that's the same thing for our brain, since our brain is also a muscle. So that is one asset of gritty people. They do not see failure as a permanent condition. They are much more resilient and more optimistic on the things that they can control rather than the things that they cannot. So the next point that we have here is to do deliberate practice. So Miss Angela Duckworth has a colleague who works on with world experts like virtuoso musicians, world-class athletes, Olympians, Nobel Prize winners. And here they showed there were some commonalities on how they worked. And these are the 4 points that they all had in common. So first is that whenever they do deliberate practice, they focus on a specific aspect on what to work on. So they have an agenda on what they're going to tackle for the day so that they won't get overwhelmed and they'll know what to measure within the day if they were successful in studying or in practicing or if they were not. Second is they usually work on a weakness, doing the uncomfortable thing. So for example, for athletes, they go over with a part that they're not good at and they try to work on it rather than the things that they are already good at, so that with that they'll be able to improve their overall performance. And next is they always seek immediate feedback from their mentors, from their tutors, from their teachers, so that they will know where they're not good at and then they'll work on it. And then they usually do these 3 things over and over again until mastery and until it doesn't require a lot of cognitive effort anymore. So the misconception here is that people who do deliberate practice is that they never feel lazy, they never feel tired, that like they have this unlimited motivation that some other people do, but that's actually false, because people who do deliberate practice, sometimes they also hate the process. It's not always fun, you know, but they still keep doing it because they are committed to their goals and they have people to support them in the days that they're not feeling that motivated. So as for the next point, they also practice self-control. So the difference between grit and self-control, so that just so we're clear, grit is the commitment for long-term goals, but self-control is on how you steer yourself or how you control yourself in the moment whenever there are temptations. Okay. So here are 5 tips on how to practice self-control. First is the situation selection. So you choose your place. So let's give an example. For example, you are in a lecture, a huge lecture hall. So in order to practice your self-control so that you'll be able to have better focus, situation selection, like choose your place. So don't sit at the back, sit in front near the professor so that it's easier to focus. So next is situation modification, choose your space. So usually in lecture halls, you have your laptop with you, you have your phones with you. So if you're to choose your space to avoid distractions, it is much better if you take notes, like cornell notes by hand, rather than opening your phone or your laptop, which might cause, for you to go over to Twitter or to Facebook or be distracted overall. So next is selective attention, choose what to look at. So if you're going to study, make sure that what's in front of you is what you only need. So don't put in there your gadgets, don't put in there your, at least turn on cold turkey, and next is cognitive reappraisal, so to see yourself in third person. So it is as to detach yourself from your first person thinking and thinking outside the box and thinking outside of the feelings that you're feeling right now, looking at the bigger picture. And next is the response modulation, on how to react on self-control whenever you're already feeling a specific temptation. Like for example, if you're already feeling bored in the lecture hall, like what are you going to do? How are you going to regain your focus? Something like that. So those are the 3 things that we just discussed. So for us teachers, what do these 3 things imply? So in the classroom, it is advocated that we should opt for a better understanding of students and learning from a motivational and psychological perspective, rather than going on the brute thinking that you should just force the students to do their assignments and then they're good with it. And second is to emphasize grit over talent, to emphasize effort and change over something that's already innate, like talent. That grit can be learned, And next is to teach students how to be autodidacts, self-directed learners, so that the motivation here is intrinsic. It is not something that's motivated by praise or not something motivated by better grades. It is something that the students have for themselves, that they're learning this subject because they want to be better at it and they will benefit from it in the future of their own accord. They're not being forced to learn. So that's one aspect that we teachers have to teach their students, to be autodidacts, to be lifelong learners. And fourth is to give better feedback to students. So the takeaway here is that in teaching grit and learning how to be gritty, we are not starting from scratch, but we are starting from experience. So I hope that us as teachers, as future teachers, will be able to apply this to ourselves and eventually integrate this to our teaching strategies, and eventually teach how to be gritty to our students. So final note, let's use psychology to our advantage. It's there for a reason. Okay, so I hope that this helps us a lot, not just from an academic perspective, but also on a personal level. So that is all. Thank you for listening.